Mind turning it off? I think it's. Do you want it on or use? Off, please.
Turn the heat and smoke up.
Fall asleep as it is. Fall asleep as it is.
And you didn't come with any book today.
Oh wow, it's very fast. There's. I want to start off with a short point. I was kicking myself for not knowing the answer. So maybe one of you will guess it and you can stop kicking myself. I didn't spend more than about 30 seconds thinking, but still. It's a very, very special word. That many people say the night we do koach. But then everybody's a bit tired, it's like a bit some people don't talk from weeks in matzah, so we say Zechel Hamikdash Gehilel, Rav the Nigan. Shnema al matzah sumoivim yochluhu. Hillel ate it with matzah more. And everybody, literally everybody must be, I don't know how you could ask this question. The pasuk that is quoted, al matzah sumoivim yochluhu, comes from where? It comes from Pashas Ba'aloischa. And he's talking about Pesach Sheni. And Hillel was doing Pesach Rishon. I want to wait for Pesach Sheni. So why in the world, when Hillel when we were discussing Hillel's sandwich in Koirach, and we're saying, like Hillel, whatever gets now, very difficult to get in. The problem is, I don't understand, why is he using Pesach Sheni, he should use Pesach Rishon? So somebody came to Rabbi and he said to him, I've got a brilliant answer. Because we're sitting Seder night, and we're devastated that we have no Beis Mikdash. So when we quote, we hope there will be Pesach Sheni. So when we do the sandwich, you already guessed it. So therefore, we say to ourselves, let's do like Hillel, and we quote Pesach Sheni. So Rasha said to him, you're wrong for two reasons. One of the reasons I guessed, and the other reason I did not.
We aren't high of first Pesach, so we can't do Pesach Sheni.
Very good. Pesach Sheni. That's what we did yesterday. But there's another reason. Very similar. That's how they were the chapter. Very good. Oh, very good. Like I didn't think about it so long, but it's another. It's very similar. Because we didn't do Pesach. Didn't do Pesach Sheni. That's very, very good. And we said that Moiv Tzib was not a Pesach Sheni. So therefore, something I actually want to ask you, if Mashiach comes with Pesach Sheni, will we be in Pesach Sheni? What's the answer? We won't be in Pesach Sheni. Good. Oh, so he wants us, why do we bring? He says that he thinks, he thinks. Geschmack is safe, I must say, he thinks that it's the posuk because that posuk is easier to cut and paste, he thinks, because the other posuk, we don't want to say a posuk which is only which Rabbeinu never cut to the end. There, you don't want to say the whole pasuk, and that pasuk finishes off Matzah. The other pasuk can say like that. It's got to do with it. Today is a whole beautiful, many numbers. It's a very vague shmakish sticker from B'nai and I read that piece. So now it's Seder night, and you're saying Matzah Yechluhu. You'll ask your children why Pesach Sheni, and you can discuss it. It's a very interesting point. I must admit, this answer which they gave to B'nai I've seen myself in many svarim. It's a brilliant chap. It's Pesach Sheni because the dad and Mashiach will come. Rashi says that halachically incorrect. It's amazing when you've got halacha, you can disprove many divrei Torah. There's a book about Rabbi Yosef that he used to write his hours on every sefer that he read, and even on storybooks, he used to write his hours. Just very briefly, that once somebody came in front of the shach, and for the shach, and then somebody had a din Torah. So the person, the Rav paskent. And what happened was the Shach was all annoyed that it passed against me. So he said to him, what proof do you have? So he said, there's a sefer that came out, a very good sefer on Chodesh Mishpat, it's called the Shach. And there it says that the halach is not like you. And the Shach walked out there thinking to himself that, you see how much Sheikhad works, because as Negei Lemai say, I wrote the sefer. The person didn't realize he was one that written the sefer. Rabbi Yosef writes to decide that it's incorrect. First of all, the Shach sefer was not printed in his lifetime. He writes his horse even on stories. He got even on divrei Torah, he got to the halach. Okay, very briefly. There's a concept called Tumas Tehoim. What's Tumas Tehoim? The simplest expression of Tehoim. Right. No, you can't know. Tumah which you do not know about. Tumah which was unknown. Unknown Tumah. That's a nice word. Unknown Tumah. The halach is, generally speaking, the tzitzis mevatzah on Tumah, right? If I mistake the blood is tummy, if the meat is tummy, if anything's tummy, what we say, it doesn't matter. The tzitzis mevatzah, I have a good word for ritzui. Perhaps what would? Jesus. Okay, the tzitz takes care of the problem. There's one category that the tzitz is not mevatza. What's the category? Who is the tzitz not mevatza? On the body of the balim. The owner's automatic is mevatza ala kodshim v'lo ala makdishim. We had a shaila regarding the kohen. We're trying to prove one way or another. We got sidetracked a little bit, meaning like this. That the Gemara tells us that even though, Mishnah tells us, that even though the tzitz is not mevatza on tumas hamakdishin, it is if what? If it's tumas satahoim. Meaning, if it's an unknown tumah, then that's okay. So let's ask you. You're known of a carbon, you've been called Pesach. You went for a walk to, you said Lifter yesterday. And I said to you, which path did you take? Took that path. I said to you, there's a body buried across the path. Will your carbon be kosher or not?
No.
It's tumas satahoim. It's unknown tumah. Unknown tumah. So therefore, the tzitz is mevatza. It is okay. The Gemara's shaila is: does that work also for the kohen? Let's say you're a kohen, right? You shechted the kohen, you shecht the kohen, right? And then somebody says to you, what do you do in the morning of Pesach? You went for a walk. This is a shaila in the Gemara which we do not resolve. It's machlis to show him. We're not going to paskin. The Gemara is not paskin. This would be a shaila in the Gemara. If you said that you went for a walk in the Pesach in the morning, and then you shechted or you sprinkled the blood of 1,000 kabbonos, and then after you sprinkle the blood of 1,000 kabbonos, you come around and you say, oh, by the way, I went for a walk, and on that path, that's what he says, what do you mean? That path, I know there's a dead body lying across that path. That's too much time. It's a shaila in the Gemara. The Gemara wants to prove it. The way the Gemara wants to prove one way or another is because there's a special Beis which we're going to quote at great length later, which says, Lo amu tumas tahoim elo lemes. The halacha is that tumas tahoim, meaning unknown tumah, that the tzitzis mevatza is only lemes and not for anything else. I've said a lot of introductions, but let's get all these introductions clear. No, for the person. We're talking about for the person. The tzitzis mevatza for tumas satahoim, for unknown tumah, only if it's tumas mace. The Gemara wants to know, what is it coming to exclude? What is it coming to exclude? That means, again, very slowly. The tzitzis mevatza for everything of kodshim, not makdishim. The exception is tumas tahoim, meaning unknown tumah. The Beis says that even that exception is only by tumas beis and not by other tumas. What other tumas are we excluding at this stage? The Gemara suggests it's tumas sheretz. Why is the Gemara not satisfied that it's coming to exclude tumas sheretz?
It's more obvious.
No.
Why is it?
Why can't the Beis say that tumas tahoim? Shai, would be still, or it's gone far too fast? Again, tumas tahoim. Again, the Torah said that we said tumas tahoim, the tzitzis mevatza, but only for tzvei meis, not for tumas sheretz. Why not tumas sheretz? The Gemara says it can't be tumas sheretz. Why? Yeah, the Gemara says it can't be nazir, but where we come in Pesach. The Gemara says it can't be because you can eat it. Therefore, let's go very slowly. Because you can eat it, therefore tumas sheretz will not disturb us whatsoever. And since tumas sheretz doesn't disturb us, you don't need the tzitz to be mevatza. The Gemara suggests it must be that the kohen became tumas sheretz, and that would disturb us. Why would that disturb us? Because tumas sheretz lasts till nightfall. So it's true the owners can eat it, but the kohen can't shecht, he can't do zvika because that has to be done before nightfall. And therefore we need we need that the Beis teaches us that tumas tahoim is not mevutza by the tzitz. Why not? Because the tzitz, so if it's tumas sheretz, because that's the chiddush that only tahoim works by mace and not by sheretz, and nafkimun will be by kohen. Says the Gemara, no, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about ziva. That's what we got up to yesterday. Now we're going to go very briefly through the main halachas of ziva until you know it on your fingertips, Moshe, and you can write it down on your walls and things. Zov and zava are very similar, but they have quite different halachas. Both of them were discussing a discharge. It's important to be aware that the discharge of Zov is not the same as discharge of Baal Keri. Gemara says it actually looks different. One's more loose, one's less loose. The Tumas Zov and Tumas Nida is the same discharge. It's only a matter of when the discharge is. That's the only nafkimina. Again, by Tumas Zov and Baal Keri, there's a difference in what the discharge actually is. By Tumas Zov and Nida, there's no difference in the discharge. It's only what time it is. That means there's 7 days. Woman sees She's tummy for 7 days. Then there's 11 days. In those 11 days, she has the potential to become a Zav. Very, very quickly. A man who sees Zav, the first time, what happens to him? Waits till night, he tubals, he's fine. The second time he sees, what happens to him? He has to wait 7 days of the Kim. It's not so that's by me. 7 days of Torah. And then he tubals that night. And that night he can eat whatever he wants. Kodshim, Kabbonos, Truma, other things. He sees 3 times what happens. So he waits 7 days. The next morning he brings his Kabbonos. And then he can eat Kodshim. So let me ask you, a person who sees 3 times. And the 7th day is going to be the night of Seder night. Can he eat the Korban Pesach?
The third time, no.
Why?
Tommy.
Oh, because he has to bring his Korban. You're right. Because he has to bring the Korban on the 8th day, which he won't be able to because it's Pesach anyway. And even by the time he does, the Korban Pesach's long finished. So you know, so you with me? Yeah? So if he sees 2 times, and then the 7th day is Erev Pesach, will he be able to eat the Korban Pesach? Yes. Because what we have to do is Tova and eat Korban Pesach. Like, that's Zov.
Join up with you. Even if you told me, you can join up.
You can join up. Oh, that's a machlokas. Yes, very good question. Between Nacht and Chatzos, so you Korban Pesach.
No, I'd say Tobel's when?
Before Shkia.
Before Shkia.
I'm asking you, join him into the group, because at the time of the group, that's a machlokas. We pass him, yes. Okay. Now that's Zov. Zov very briefly. She sees once. This gets very complicated. She sees once. She's called a Shomeres Yomi Keneged Yomi. Meaning, let's say we take the 11 days between Zav and Nida and Nida. So those 11 days, she sees once. Let's say she sees on a Sunday morning. And what happens is, she's tummy that whole day. Then she has to wait for a whole day of Tara Monday. If Monday she doesn't see, then she tables on Monday night she can eat. So let's say, for example, if Erev Pesach was a Shomeres Yomi Keneged Yomi. If Erev Pesach was Shomeres Yomi Keneged Yomi, can she eat the Korban Pesach?
No.
Why not?
Yes,
if she sees on Erev Pesach, she can't. If she sees the day before Erev Pesach, and the Erev Pesach was the Shomeres Yomi, you're right, I didn't say it's the one. If the Erev Pesach was the day of Tara, then she can eat. If she sees again the next day, what happens? If she sees twice, what happens? No. Again, she waits Shomeres Yomi Keneged Yomi. She eats just one more day. She sees again, so let's say she sees Sunday morning, she waits for Monday. If Monday she doesn't see, she turns Monday night. If she sees on Monday, that's already a big shaila, but she's toy after that. So if she didn't see Monday, Monday night she could eat kodshim. If she did see Monday, then she has to wait for Tuesday. Let's say she doesn't see Tuesday, she tables Tuesday night, she could eat kodshim. If she does see Tuesday, then she has to wait for 7 days that she doesn't see anything at all. And then she tables on the 7th night, she won't be able to eat kodshim because then the problem of the korban as well. So she'll have to wait the 8th day. That is the basic gist. Nice nowadays was Makadosh Shuvanakim. That's already getting it.
She can't bring neither Zov or Zov that
Korban Pesach.
Korban.
Why?
No, I'm asking. They can't bring the 8th day Korban until after.
Till after the 7 days. Till that's it. Till after Korban Pesach. So they won't be able to.
No, say till Cholamot.
Till Cholamot. They won't be able to bring it till Cholamot. Right. You won't be able to bring it to Yom Tov. You will not be able to bring it to Yom Tov. You can't bring a korban because it's a regular korban. Now, so the Gemara said that Tumas Tehom of a Zava. What will be Tumas Tehom of a Zava? Let's say a Zava spat or urinated, and therefore the halacha is that it is got the halacha of Avatuma. And what happened was the Kohen went for a walk, and you say to him, "Where did you walk?" And he said, "Yes, I walked through that part." And after you say to him, "That was the urine of a Zava," and he couldn't possibly know. So the halacha is. So now, would Tumas Tehom be matter for Zava or not? What's the halacha? You did say. Tumas, only for mace. Very good. So now there, you can't say, what do I care? Surely be able to eat that night because it's Shomeres Yomi Keneged Yomi. And since Shomeres Yomi, that means if an Erev Pesach, the Kohen or the Baalim became Tomei B'Tumas Tehom of Zava, you can't say it's like Sheretz. Why can't you say it's like Sheretz? Because by Sheretz, you can eat that night. But by Zav, you can't eat that night. And therefore,
if it's Maratza, when could eat? If it was Maratza.
If it was Maratza Tumas HaTehom, since he never knew about it, so it's as if he's not Tomei, so therefore he undoes it. Says the Gemara, we'll have with all this introduction, I hope it's all memorized. The Tumas Tehom the Ziva, Lo Maratza, is it not Maratza? Now we're talking about, we'll have to pay Aleph and Aleph, the top line of the page. Very, very slowly. a woman was a Zava 2 days before Pesach. I should be very clear. There is not an Erev Pesach. 2 days before Pesach, she sees once. What does she need to do? Shemer Yom. So Erev Pesach, she's standing the whole day anxiously that she shouldn't see because she wants to be able to eat the Korban Pesach. So what happened was they did Shechita. They included her in the group, and they did Shechita and Zvika. After they did the Zvika, before Nacht, she saw. She's not allowed to eat Korban Pesach, and we shouldn't say that that's obvious she can't eat Korban Pesach. Why can't she Korban Pesach? She's mamish Tommy. She's poppy Tommy. In fact, the next day it's not that clear she should be able to eat Korban Pesach. But certainly she can't eat that thing. Uptu will ask Pesach Sheni, but she doesn't have to make Pesach Sheni. Now that is a chiddush. Why in the world does she not need to do Pesach Sheni? If you say that Tumas Toim is not the tzitz is not Maratz of Zovo, so therefore she's Tommy. She's Tommy. What? Wait.
She's a minority.
She's a minority who's Tommy. A minority who's Tommy waits Pesach Sheni. My time, it must be that the tzitz is Maratz, this is not Tommy. Now, if you say that the previous Beis talked about Sheil, it's not a kasha, but here we're talking about Zovo. A very, very big chiddush according to Rabbi Yossi, and that is like this. That Rabbi Yossi holds, we said, how long does she have to wait a whole day? But there's a concept of mitzvah kekula. So the minute that it becomes the Erev Pesach morning, a minute into the day, she's already Shemer Yisrael, she's already finished being Shemer Yisrael. Because Shemer Yisrael means, let's say she saw 2 days before Pesach, so the day of Erev Pesach, she has to be Shemer Yisrael. But once in Wales, 1 minute into the day, she's finished being Shemer Yisrael, and now she's completely torn. Since she's completely torn, when she shechted and did Zvika, everything was fine. And then what went wrong? She saw later on in the day, after the Shechita and the Zvika. But by then, it's a whole new story. A whole new story. Who cares? When she bought the Korban Pesach, she was fine. And that's why she doesn't need to make Pesach Sheni. Says the Gemara. They did Shechita and Zvika on the 7th day. And then he saw, we say everything they touched from the morning till the night is Tommy. Why is everything Tommy from morning to night Tommy? Let's work it out. The 2 days before Pesach, what do I say? 2 days before Pesach she sees. And Erev Pesach, the 1 minute went past of the day, according to what we understood till now, she's finished being Shemer Yisrael. She's completely taught. Then she sees again in the night. So what's it? It's a new tumah. So why is she studying matame everything from the beginning of the day to the end of the day? Or uptum last is Pesach Sheni. Or mi ma'ale mafia midurabanan. It's only midurabanan. So again, we're established and we keep to this shita. Now, according to Rabbi Yossi, what happens is a very interesting thing. A woman who's a Shemer Yisrael Keneged Yoim. What happens is the minute the day starts, she's finished. Then what happens is she's completely toy. Then the rest of the day she's toy. When she sees it's a whole new parasha, and then she's only time in her family to rabbanon. She wasn't Tommy, and that's why she doesn't need to bring Pesach Sheni. Why does she not need to bring Pesach Sheni? Because at the time of the Shechita and the Zvika, she was completely toy. Why she asks the question, you should know the answer. Why does this Beis tell us that a Zov who sees twice, and they shechted, and then this is Zvika, and then later he saw, according to Rabbi Yossi, he's allowed to eat the Korban Pesach. Why? Because Rabbi Yossi holds that what you see later is a whole new story. We don't care. You finish the day. That means you have to wait for Zayin Akim. The minute that it's Zayin Akim, according by a Zov, once it's morning, you finish Zayin Akim. Asks Rashi, so why not talk about a case where he sees 3 times and tell us the same chiddush? Why not talk about cases of saw 3 times? Pesach was the Yom Zayin. Oh, the answer is because he still won't be able to do the Korban Pesach because he needs to bring a Korban the next day. And by then, the Korban Pesach will be already noise. So, okay. So, he also understood in Shittas Rabbi Yossi that the Tumah D'Rabbanan is Mafia. The Tanya, Rabbi Yossi, by the way, there's a very big niddah thesis in the Megillah discusses it a little bit. That over here, it says, the Tanya, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yossi was an Amoyer. If you look in the chart that one's given out, he's an Amoyer. The Tanya always means a brisa. So how could it be? There are 3 ways to understand it. One is to miss out the word the Tanya and then make it not a brisa. Let me see my Gia the Gemara. A third way is to say that Rabbi Yossi of Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan is also quoted, also an Amoyer, was such early Amoyim. They were the first generation Amoyim. Therefore, Every so often they're quoted in the Beis. So like there were young people, let's say, in the time of the Tanoim. Alternatively, there was two other people called Rabbi and Rabbi Yechanan who were Tanoim, and in fact, this is not the normal Rabbi and Rabbi Yechanan. Now, you might think that's a major doichet, but Tais Megillah says that there was a Tana called Rabbi Yechanan. Says Tais, how do I know that? Because there's a Gemara in Pesachim that says the Tanya Rabbi Yechanan replies. So it must be that there was a Tana called Rabbi Yechanan, which we've never heard of before. Okay, very briefly, the Tanya Rabbi Shoima. A Zov that sees on the seventh day, he has to start from scratch, right? That's how we always know it. A Zov sees on the seventh day, he has to start again on Shana Kippur. Only that day he has to count. One more day. I don't understand this. If you hold that once the morning starts, it doesn't help it because we don't consider a complete day. And therefore, it's as if he was tummy the whole day. I feel so he has to start the whole Zanikim because he never had 7 clean days. If you hold that you need a whole day, he never had 7 clean days because on the 7th day he saw. If you say, like we just said before, that the 7th day you've got a minute of tower, the rest of the day is okay. Yomi says, fine, he's got 7 days, and he's finished the 7 days. Or he saw again, who cares? He won't be a Zov, he'll just be like a Balkari. And the Balkari just waits for Nacht to finish with. Why do you say that needs to count another whole day? You have to Magia Rabbi Yochanan, edit it, and to say that Rabbi Yochanan meant it not say anything. And Rabbi Yosha replied to Rabbi Yochanan, you that say that a person who sees on the 7th day in the afternoon is fine, and he's got 7 clean days, it's like Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi said, okay. So let's go very, very briefly again. The Torah says that Tumah is Mutzalidei Tzitz, only of the Kodshim, not the Makdishim. We had a Shaila regarding Kohanim. We had a Brisa which says that if this din that Tumas Tahoim is okay, it's only by mace. We wanted to say, what's the exception? We couldn't find the exception by Sheret, because by Sheret it makes no nafkimena. So we said the exception is by Zov. By Zov it's not true. So the Gemara says, yes, it is. That it's Rabbi Yossi that holds it's not a problem. But by us, it would be a problem. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yossi. So what's mace coming to exclude? He'll have nothing to exclude. Why? He can't exclude Zov because he holds that Zov is okay because it's a whole new year that the time the Korban was fine. He can't exclude Sheretz. Why not? Because Sheretz, the Baalin, can eat that night. So he must be excluding the Kohen. And he's aware that generally, Tumas Tahoim is Mevutza by Kohen. Nishet Binod Kohen, that normally Tumas Tahoim is Mutter by Kohen except for Sheretz. Because Soba in Shirtim is looking at me, Sheretz. There's a of the opinion that a person can't shecht. You asked earlier, can you shecht to somebody? Can you shecht to somebody who's tummy b'shas tumah? But this holds you can't. Since it holds you can't, so therefore you need the vitzah of the tzitz, and the vitzah of the tzitz only works tumas haToim of mace, not of sheretz, and therefore somebody who's tummy b'sheretz indeed will not be allowed to bring a korban Pesach going to a Beis. Now here the Gemara asks the kasha in Hilchos Ziva. We always knew that if a woman sees 3 times in Beis Zava, what happens? What's the din? Just wait 7 days. And this is dependent on the fact that she saw in the day that she was supposed to be waiting Yom Kippur Gedolim. I mean, she saw, let's say, Sunday. And we say to her, wait for Monday to be a clear day. But Monday wasn't a clear day, she saw in the afternoon. But according to Rabbi Yossi, what does Rabbi Yossi say? Meaning that the second the morning starts, she's finished. So now when she sees on Monday, it's the first time she's ever seen. So it'll never be 3 days. So how can she ever become a Zova Gedolah according to Rabbi Yossi? Is the kasha clear? When she sees once, the next day that she sees, what? No, because a woman doesn't become a Zova Gedolah through 1 day, only if it's 3 consecutive days. It's like counted as one. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yossi Zova Gemura. How would you ever find it? The Gemara gives 2 answers. Fast. A woman that sees non-stop, that means for 3 days she sees non-stop. So therefore, she's considered that she's a Zava Gedolah. Beis Ema, she saw 2 nights from the beginning of Shiur to the end of the Shiur. Well, she gives the example of Friday night. So let's imagine she sees Friday afternoon from Shkia Tanach, and then Motzei Shabbos from Shkia Tanach. So that she saw Friday. And Shabbos, did she have a dekim on Shabbos? No, because the second that Shabbos came in, she was already tummy. And then she already saw. And then Sunday, did she have a clear night? No, because the second that Sunday came in, she was already not clear. And that's why we're talking about a case, that's how it's possible she could have 3 consecutive days. Rashi, interestingly enough, said, I'll prove from you a very interesting thing, that we hold Mixas Yom Kekulu. That there's a very big fundamental shaila of Mixas Yom Kekulu. When do we start Mixas Yom Kekulu? It's actually a Gemara Megillah. Those who have amazing. When do you say Mixas Yom Kekulu? Is Mixas Yom Kekulu also from the night? Or do you need part of the morning to be Mixas Yom Kekulu? It says, actually, from our Gemara, it's proven that a bit of the night is already called Mixas Yom Kekulu. Why did the Gemara not talk about a case where she saw in the day and then she saw just before nets? And that would be enough that she doesn't have a clear day, because if she saw just before nets, that's already not a clear day. Is a Vaya, says Rashi, that let's see, if you want to see it in Rashi, it's 5 lines from the end of the wide lines. Says Tosfos, Inami, second to bottom Tosfos, a very long Tosfos, and this Tosfos goes to town, that he says it's really, really not true. And you always need Mixas Yom Kekulu. I mean, the Maisa nowadays, where Machme, you should just know by every woman, both Hilchas Zava and Hilchas Nida. The Gabi Hilchas Zava, we need Shimon Akim. Gabi Hilchas Nida, we need Nacht. The truth of the matter is that we're taking 2 chumras which are a bit close to each other. A Nida doesn't need, a Nida waits for Nacht. A Nida is coming for 7 days and has to wait for Nacht. A Zava doesn't actually need to wait for Nacht. Once she's got Mixas Yom Kekulu, it's all right. So in fact, the Mechaber talks about a case of a woman who tovos, like say a minute after Alois, where in theory, because she's mamish fine, because if she was a Nida, she's like they tov ages ago, because she's got Shivon Akim, usually it's many days before that. If she was a Zava, she's got Mixas Yom Kekulu. But why did Mechaber talk about a minute after Alois? Why didn't he talk about a minute after the Nacht of the 6th day? The answer is because he holds up this Tosfos that Mixas Yom Kekulu is only if you have part of the day. You can't have Mixas Yom Kekulu of the night. It's a very important issue. Okay. Now, so till now we asked the Shaila, what about a Kohen regarding Korban Pesach? Do we say that the tzitz is Maratza? Boy, Abdi Yosef Kohen Maratza betomit. The Kohen does the avoid betomit, hutu to Masatoim or look. Im to Mitzulema Kohen Maratza bekorban Yisrael, Shanoz Merisa Pesach, hutu to Masatoim, Kohen Maratza betomit, might. It means if you say that by Korban Pesach and Noz, it does work, what about Korban Tomit? Minon, do we say Kiki Mio to Masatoim Pesach, but Tomit like Mio, the only like Korban Pesach, not by Tomit? We can learn Korban Pesach for Pesach. The question is like this: we have a Korban Tomit. Korban Tomit belongs to Kali Yisrael. The Kohen goes and shechts, does Vik and everything else, and after he does the entire job, we find out that he had gone for a walk that day, and he had walked over a dead body without realizing that he had walked there. And now we want to know, do we need to bring a new Korban Tomit? That would be the simple shayla. The Rishonim say that is not the shayla of the Gemara, because that would be obvious it's okay, because Tumah Hutra B'tzibur. The shayla is slightly more delicate, and that is like this, that we have a Kohen in front of us who's Tommy, and the question is, we've got other Kohen who are Toy, and this Kohen who's Tommy became Tommy through Tumas HaToim. And do we have to call him, send him away and look for a Kohen which is Torah? That means even lechatchila we're going to use a Kohen who, when he became Tomei, never knew, but now he knows, and that's the chiddush of the Gemara, that maybe it works. It's got to the fact, otherwise, what's the chiddush? Otherwise, of course, but the evidence is all okay. A Kohen knows his Tomei can't be Korban Pesach, but Korban HaToim is allowed to if all of Klal Yisrael are Tomei. So then the Kohen is allowed to bring it, pay Aleph on the Beis, in addition to the Tumas HaToim is not a Kal V'chayim. There's a principle in halachas that we do not do a Kal V'chayim from halacha l'Moshe Misinai. That means, when you've got something which the Torah says explicitly, you could do a Kal V'chayim to learn something else from something else which is in the Torah. Something which the original halacha is only learned from halacha l'Moshe Sinai, you do not rely on a Kal V'chayim. I saw a whole lot of actually. Rashi discusses why that is. It's very interesting. You saw it. You do not do a kavachima from halacha l'Moshe Messina. Here, the halacha l'Moshe Messina is that Tumas HaToim is okay by Pesach. So you can't do kavachima tomit from Pesach. How do we know? Well, tell you go Beis. Very briefly like this. And nozif that touches a bone the size of a barley, he has to start the whole process again. Even though a normal person does not become tummy if he's in the tent of a bone the size of a barley. That means if I go into a tent and there's a piece of dead body, if it's the size of a kazais, then I become tummy. Because the dead body's there, I'm in the same room, become tummy. If it's less, if it's only like a body, I don't become tummy. If a nazir touches the size Right, thank you very much. Sorry about that disturbance. Somebody's gone off now.
Gone off again.
No, somebody's gone off. You're done.
Gave up.
Gave up. Again, very briefly. Sorry about the interruption. I don't know why the internet is how to cope with it. Again, with the hits. When you go over 100 million hits, the internet crashes. So anyway, very briefly, what happens is like this: a bone which is a se'ora is not metamid b'oil, but is making nozer restart. Kavachim and revius hadam, which is metamid b'oil, will obviously make a nozer restart. What's the flaw in that logic? Who can tell me the flaw in that logic? What's halacha l'mishvis? I think the bone. I think the bone is. It's the bone. That's it. That's it. The bone. It's back on. The bone is metame nozer is only halacha l'mishvis. Says the Gemara, we do kavachim. Elo marov yalef miradem pesach. We do exer shava. So the mice, if somebody would ask you, is keva at home? It's a tumas at home by tomid work. The answer is shava pesach miradem pesach. Now, this Gemara, Rashi already asks this question. That really this Gemara should have come earlier. Now the Gemara is finally going to tackle where do we know the concept of tumas at home? Tumas at home gufei chiksiva. Where do we know? What's tumas at home? A simple way to describe tumas at home?
Invisible.
Unknown tumah, invisible tumah, unknown tumah. What's the halacha of unknown tumah? Tzitzis meratza. That's what tzitzis meratza. Again, unknown tumah, tzitzis meratza. All right, Moshe, did you hear that? No, you haven't heard it then. The tzitz. Again, that's very simple. It's just you get sometimes you hear words, it floods your mind. You think to yourself, it's a hard thing. It's a very simple thing. What happens is like this: if you've got an unknown tumah, what's an unknown tumah? You went for a walk, you walked over a dead body, you never knew that it was buried there, and nobody knew. So now, what are you, Tommy or Toy? You're Tommy, and you're Tommy. So the fact that you don't know about it, you're Tommy. And now you go and bring and do an avoid to the Beis Hamikdash. What's the din? Kosher apostle? Kosher. Why? How do we know that? Olav means on him. On him means that you knew about it. So that's how do you know about Pesach? To you. What's to you mean? When you know. Like a path. If somebody's far away from the Beis Hamikdash, you can't become a Pesach. Is that an unknown or known factor? It's a known factor. Right? If you're far away from Yerushalayim, it's a known factor. It's not something which people don't know about. So just like Tumah, it has to be a known fact. So too, just like you're far away, it's a known issue. Tumah has to be a known issue. Says, well, none of these answers work. May say, no. Nobody from one end of the world to the other end of the world knows about it. If one person knows about it, it's not Tumas HaToim. The Rishonim say, I was about to say, no, only if the person knows that somebody knows, that is considered. If I walk on a path and nobody that I knew, that's okay. If somebody that I knew, that's no good. Okay.
You get double confirmation.
Yes.
Somebody knows.
No, there is, if I know that somebody knew about this, let's say I go for a walk on that Pesach morning, and I said I walked over this path. And you say, there's a dead body there. So you knew, that's no good. But if, for example, even if I didn't know, I knew at the time, but afterwards I know that he knew. But if I didn't know when I bought the korban that anybody knew, so that's considered unknown. Okay. We'll discuss a bit more in a minute. Yes. Says more. That you have to know at Yotahu. Why does it help if somebody else in the world knows? Rabbi Lezer said a drasha that you have to know. Here I didn't know. If we're learning it from that pasuk, so Tumas HaToim should be as long as I don't know about it. To you, at least two people need to know about it because yeah, you only found out afterwards. No, but here you bought the korban, you only became known. You only found out that there was a tumor there after you walked there. After you walked the korban. No, I think that if it's before you bought the korban, since at the time that you walked, nobody told you about it, so you're still toy. Could that be? Could you still bring the korban? I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think that's so. That it's like a path. Just like everybody in the world knows if you're away from Yerushalayim. So also we have just no. It's halacha l'mishmisida. The kol asmachta ba'alma. The pasuk is just the asmachta, and it's not a mekor. It's halacha l'mishmisida. If he found out that he walked there after Zrika, if you found out that you were Tomei before Zrika, if you find a dead body and is across the path, the Tumah Tomei, the Noziv is a Pesach toy, is toy. Whenever we say the word toy, never want to say if a korban is kosher or possible, say kosher or possible. Toy is to define the person. So what does the word toy mean? That the person is established that he is toy. If we want to say, but the ever the korban is okay, we'd say korban is kosher. But we say toy is lahabo, that he is toy lahabo. Even if he found out before Zvika, and he did Zvika, it's still Maratza, because that's how we pass that is considered a toy. That's why I'm not sure. I think you have to have done the shechita already, and then the zvika is okay. But if you haven't even done the shechita, I don't know if you're allowed to start. Okay. Yeah, because you're Tommy. Gufa. So if a person, this whole din of Tumas HaToim is only for Gabi Pesach and Noz, not Gabi Tumah. So we have to get a picture. Imagine this is the path, and there's a dead body across the entire path. And I walked over it for Truma and Tomei, for Noza and Pesach, it's Tumas HaToim, and therefore I'm Toy. Says, if let's say the body is not across the whole path, the body is only over 80% of the path, and I went there, so I don't know, did I cross the body or not? The halacha is Truma Toy, even for Truma is Toy. Now, does anybody know why you're Toy? Oh, it's Suffolk Tomei. You've got a path. I said to you, I went on this path. I walked along King's Road. There was a body by King's Road, very big. I walked on, there's a narrow path between Parksway and Sedgley Park, right? To go to school. So I said, I went that path, and you said there was a body across. Tommy. For Tumah, for Pesach, has no Sam Tom. If it is only covering 50 or 80% of the path, I'm Tom. Why am I Tom? Suffolk Tumah. Somebody should know the answer. I didn't say, what's the answer? Oh, Sofik Tumba Bishusavabim Toy. Where do we know it from? Sota. Let me say Sota from the fact that we know it from Sota. Oh. Sofik Tumba Bishusavabim. Okay. Even by his soul, everybody's told. What? Yes. If the body is broken into pieces, toy. Even maybe went through the pieces. I saw a beautiful thing from the Miriam. This is Pashim Shat. Let's say this is the path. I don't know. I'm not going to make it here. The path is this table, right? Imagine the path is this table, and there's one dead body part going across the table this way, and another body part going 70% that way. What we do is we assume we're makel, and we imagine that you probably walked and you avoided it, even though they're overlapping. But they're not overlapping against parallel to each other. They're overlapping not parallel to each other. And the only way to get through is to zigzag across. You didn't even know. You had no idea there was a body there.
You knew you walked a straight line.
Well, I mean, if you knew you walked in a straight line, what did it be? I don't know. We say, you come to a person, you say, I went through that shortcut. Somebody says, oh, there's a body there. So you say to him, does the body cover the whole thing? No, it only covers 80%. But it covers 80% at the beginning and 80% later. It's still toy. Why? We imagine that you walked through. Because it's still Sofik Tumah. Says if the whole body was in pieces and it was in one cave, and the cave covered the entire path, your tummy, because the cave itself spreads tumah. So let's see, you've got the cave is a tomb, yeah? Tomb. Oh, it's tomb. Tomb. Let's say there's a tomb, a cave, a grave. It's across the whole thing. I think it's tomb, but I'll take you with me.
It's like comb. It should be comb, but it's not.
It's okay. It's tomb. Anyway, it crosses the entire path, even though the body does not cover the whole path. Your tummy. I'm pretty sure for tummy. Oh, but they should cover itself for the cave and the grave. I'm scared to say the word. You'll correct me. The grave is mitzvah all the pieces, and therefore it's considered as if you covered one more malach b'raglav. Avotonu rochu tummy. If you're going on a wagon or on a horse, you're always tummy, even if it's only covered 80%. Does anybody want to guess why? Because when you go in a wagon, you spread, and you're riding, you spread yourself. What? I make platform myself, right? Oh, we know for the poor Duma as well. Of the kind to get. So what happens is you spread yourself, so therefore you're likely to you're out of bed. Meaning, if you knew for definite there was a body there, but you knew that it only covers 80% of it, so you said to yourself, I don't know where it is, I'll walk through. Tommy or Torah, there you're Tommy. Why? Because there it's a Tumah Yadua. If you didn't know about it, so you've got all these colors that maybe you zigzagged, that maybe you did it. But if you knew about it, you're tummy, because it's no longer to us to be a tummy. Says the Gemara, if somebody knows about it, it's not to us. If you find a body underneath straw, underneath earth, underneath stones, has it to us at home, because maybe nobody ever knew about it. But mine, if you're crossing over water, there's a body there. By a failure, you're walking in a dark place and you stumble over a dead body. In the cracks of the rocks, it's not tumas hatoim. Why not? Because that anybody can see. The fact that it's dark now, in the morning it wasn't dark. The fact that it's in water, it can be perfectly visible, so it's not considered tumas hatoim. But in base Bilvad, we said earlier, it's either coming to exclude sheretz or zohar. Let's carry on a bit more. Nitzvah sholim or ruboy. So if they are people, a person gets his korban Pesach tummy, either the whole or the majority. You have to burn it on the Beis, and you use the wood of the Beis Hamikdash. Nitva miyuto, if only a little bit comes stomach, there no so there's a bit leftovers. So if there's you can burn it in your gardens or on your rooftops. You have to provide their own wood. So again, if the majority of your korban comes stomach, you have to burn it on the Beis, but you get the wood paid for. If you burn a minority, if a minority becomes stomach, you burn it wherever you want, but you have to provide the wood. You've got a korban Pesach, you cut it into pieces, you cut it up into pieces to serve to the portion. You cut it up, You invited 10 people, and then a dead body came and touched a few, shells landed on a few of them. Had Taikonim, those who are misers, surplus if they are pure, even if they have a tiny bit of meat to burn, they'd want to save on fuel, so they would take it to the Beis, to save on the wood fuel. Why? They were kagas, stingy. It says, well, my time, what's the difference if it's mostly burnt or bit burnt? The halacha is that you should burn it. You can burn it if you want. In order to embarrass people that got most of the carbon tummy, we made a special takana that you have to burn it on the wood of in front of the Beis Hamikdash. Because imagine you have a Korban Pesach. Why were you not more careful with the Korban Pesach? The majority of the Korban Pesach in Tommy, you allowed dead shrotzim to touch it. You took it to a house with Tommy Mace, right? What? So what? You should have worked harder.
We're usually so careful not to rouse people.
Yeah, one of the
Yeah, the law then continues.
More important.
Okay, we'll stop here. Okay. No, okay. So again, so I have to remember if something. I'll tell you, the interesting thing is that's a big role was also Yerushalayim was telling me he's very, very stressed. What are you stressed about? So interesting thing. I don't have an answer. This is a huge talk. The halacha is that Korban Pesach can only be eaten in Yerushalayim, right? And it can only the bachloikus in the Gemara where the niskachu agagos. That means if you've got a rooftop, can you eat the Korban Pesach on your roof? We pass the Rambam pass that you can't eat Korban Pesach on the roof, which means you can only eat Korban Pesach on the ground. And anybody who's been to Yerushalayim today knows that the whole of Yerushalayim is you go. I remember I used to live in the name. You go now, it's 15 floors high in called I don't know the areas what they're called. No, the top there. It's Ganegula. Everybody's going to have to eat the Korban Pesach on ground floor, and if the sellers. No, but he said to me, I don't want to buy anywhere except ground floor property in Yerushalayim. And I said, what am I going to do? How is everything going to fit on ground floor? And he said he's very worried about it, doesn't know the answer. It's interesting.
The same way as they can shaft a million korbanos in
imagine
a small area.
No, but everybody lives on floors. You've got and if there's basements, you have to go to the car park to eat it because we pass Kaloni Sketch Gagas. So everybody who buys a property in Yerushalayim, make sure only buy ground